Hey everyone, my name is Rooster, and welcome back to Mechabellum. In today's video, I have a replay from the EU mini tournament last Wednesday, where I was playing up against Hero Ajax. Now, they'll be going for a missile specialist here with steel balls and crawlers, and as for myself, there are quite a few options I have here, but I end up going for quick supply, tarantula, Fang. I haven't been the biggest fan of tarantulas lately. I mean, for a while, to be honest, not just lately. They just seem to have some very bad matchups, and it can be very tricky to get into the late game, which is where typically spiders start to shine. So I think the sledgehammer pack that was offered there is probably safer, but with quick supply, you can kind of get into techs a bit quicker, and that often does alleviate some of the pressure that you might face when you're starting to play Tarantula. This way I can try and aim for an early range enhancement or potentially high explosive if we get into a headbutt. And hopefully things will be a little bit more playable from there. Now my opponent here should try and go for some type of chaff clear on round one, ideally. Something like Arclight or Hound. I think into Spider you probably rather would have Arclight, and honestly into a headbutt if that is what they want to go for. Arclight with Shockwave is very, very good. I'm going to opt to go for Void Eyes here. They still pair nicely with Tarantula, and they're a very good option against Steel Balls, so I'm not too unhappy about that. I will say that once again I missed my opponent being Missile Spec, so I didn't necessarily set up for that. But to be honest, I don't think I would have set up in any different way if I did know about it. It's kind of just the nature of Missile Spec where you can't mess up your positioning too much, only to kind of diminish the amount of value your opponent would get, because they would get the value just by you messing up your entire positioning and making sure that, your units aren't coordinated at all, only to dodge a missile. Here, though, we should do all right. We'll have to see whether or not my Void Eyes can lock on. On the left, it seems like it's mostly the Spider doing all the work, and only one Void Eye there really getting locked on. The right side, I think, also not ideal. My Void Eyes ended up shooting at Crawlers, and it does mean that round one here will go over to my opponent. They do decide to go for Arclights, and here, because I'm, in a headbutt, a very close range scenario, my mind immediately was going towards, I probably want to try and go high explosive very early on here. My opponent already has triple crawler. I kind of expect him to buy more chaff. And honestly, high explosive isn't that bad into stuff like Steel Ball, if only to kind of, deal more damage to the entire pack and then have whatever your DPS carry is deal with the rest. Rhino Assault gets offered. I do decide to pick it up. Into Missile Spec, there is an argument to be made to not go for the spell on round 2, because your opponent is favored here. They have double missile available, even if they only use one. Missile Strike is a spell that can show up on round 2, and if it lands, it usually gives you an advantage, or big enough of an advantage, that, you would likely end up losing. So my opponent having access to 2, if not 3 spells compared to my 1, if I pick Rhino Spec, means that I probably still would be unfavored. So there is an argument to be made here to just skip it altogether, kind of tank the round, expecting it, to be a loss, and then hopefully have an economic advantage in the long run. It's not what I do in the game. I actually go for Rhino Assault and kind of try my luck. There is a world where I manage to get the debuff first, or my opponent, doesn't defend the right side tower. They do. They put a crawler there. I have a Fang from round 1 to defend mine, but, here is Missile Spec with the Missile Strike taking down my Fang, which means that the tower is fully open, and I will get debuffed first. Opponent goes for a Phoenix, which I did expect, which is why I went for a Farseer. I wasn't entirely sure whether or not they wanted to go for a Phoenix or maybe something like a Wasp, and here I did make the decision based off of Missile Spec, because obviously if I go for a Phoenix myself or a Wasp, that becomes a target for the Missile Strike, whereas the Farseer can just tank it and is still a really good unit this early on, right? The support unit kind of is a carry, at least this early on, does very well into pretty much anything and can still deal with any air threat that may show up. And honestly, I'm not too unhappy here about the round. I end up losing, but only by a Rhino, which came from the drop. So pretty decent result. Round number 3, Improved Overlord shows up. Very scary card long term, but kind of hard to get into. And I'm not an aerial spec or anything, so yeah, getting into that would likely take another 2 rounds at minimum, so I wasn't too interested. Underground Threat, yet again another very cheap spell here, but that can have a big impact and is kind of annoying to defend against. There's a redeployment as well that could be worth it. Both of us decide to go for the Underground Threat, as well, the backline is still relatively open, especially for myself. It's a little bit of a pain, so that's why I decide to use this defensively as opposed to offensively. My opponent already has a couple crawlers, and yeah, with the new Underground Threat, a missile, at least if it's well placed, will take out most of the Underground Threat, and then if you just have about a pack of crawlers to defend, you'll be just fine. So I decided to just put a couple of crawlers, hope that this will, you know, deviates to either the left or the right. Actually, never mind. I'm going to make it, or put it on the right, because this only has a fang, and of course my opponent does have a missile strike. I thought maybe they would put the crawler here, missile my fang again, and I'd be in trouble. So I'm just hoping that the Farseer will be able to clean up this crawler pack, as well as the missile that I put back there defensively. Instead, though, it's going to be a missile straight on top of my fangs and my void eyes, kind of opening up the way for their steel balls. Missile there could not have been any worse, as the crawler pack splits up, mainly going for my Farseer, which will be able to deal with it. But yeah, that means that I have no DPS right now to get rid of those steel balls. Again, it's not the worst result in the world. It looks like the Farseer will be able to kill most units, but the enemy steel balls will level up. So will the Phoenixes. And even the Arclights here, grabbing a couple of levels with Shockwave being picked up. I think I went for High Explosive on the Tarantulas, as, yeah, I felt like I just needed the additional splash for the bonus, well, chaff clearing speed, and I don't really need the range here, as we are very close to one another. Round number 4, we get unit reinforcements. Raiden makes a lot of sense for me, because I'm up against Steel Balls, I'm up against Arclights and Phoenixes. Raiden is really good into that, but Melting Point is offered as well, which is kind of the counter to Raiden, and I expected my opponent to pick that up because it also wouldn't be the worst into my Tarantulas. It's not, like, mandatory against Tarantula, but it's not bad by any means, and if, well, they're expecting me to go Raiden, it would have been a nice pickup. What I did not expect is my opponent to go for the Stormcaller pack here, because Stormcaller is not that great in short-range scenarios. It is the unit with the highest base range in the game, and so it really loves utilizing all of its range, which is something it doesn't get to do in these type of close-range encounters. So we can see that the Stormcaller here gets sold. It is a very high-value pack, the highest value pack alongside Rhino. So selling it is not a terrible option, but I feel like Melting Point just made sense here, considering the board state. It defends against Fort AA if that were to come out, because maybe the Phoenix becomes a problem. It defends against the Raiden, which is a very natural pickup for myself. And it pairs nicely with the Arclights. So yeah, wasn't quite expecting this, and that's why I'm not really defending this Tower take with the Stormcaller. Because it just wasn't on, you know, my radar at all. I go for double Raiden. Crawlers here in the back to try and pull away some of my opponent's units, and I also kind of wanted to try and trigger that missile in the back if possible, just to make my opponent a bit uncomfortable. Doesn't seem like that'll be the case though. My crawlers do end up losing, and because of that debuff on the right side tower, I instantly lose my Tarantulas. They die a little bit too quickly. I don't have enough left here to chaff clear, which means I take a boatload of damage. And round number 5, Ion Beam shows up, a Missile Strike is back, and you can really feel the pressure here that Missile Specialists sometimes can, well, can put on you, right? Especially when paired with all of these kind of blue cheap spells. Having the ability to kind of strike away a defender of a tower, and then also get a tower debuff when you combine it with a Rhino drop, a Wasp drop, an Underground Threat. You know, you can get into some really tricky scenarios, and it's making me spread kind of thinly across the board. I lose my tower here because I didn't expect the unit drop, as Melting Point was a very sensible option as well. And now I have to deal with Ion Beam. Now, lucky for me, I also get to pick it myself, and a very common play here is to use the mobile beacon on the Ion Beam turn and kind of move your army to the other side of the field. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to grab the Tarantula, the Crawler, the Raiden, beacon them to the right. I'm also starting an attack on this right side of the board with a Tarantula, a Crawler, and a Raiden. I sold one of my Raidens to be able to afford all of that. And I do put a missile on this flank as a Phoenix now shows up there. I did, note that the missile strike is back off cooldown. That Fang is vulnerable. It is the only flank defender for the time being. So if that disappears, then I might get debuffed. And I really have to be careful here on 1500 hit points. A tower debuff could very well spell the end of the game for me. I'm very happy that my opponent didn't commit double onto the flank, by the way. A crawler with a Phoenix would have gotten the tower, as I only would have missiled the crawler. But, my opponent also has to make some decisions as to where they want to use their deployments. And thankfully, they don't go for the double deploy on the flank. I do missile the Phoenix. I don't get immediately debuffed. And I get a really nice ion beam there, cleaning up my opponent's anti-air. The Phoenix is now dead. And that means I will just be able to get a round victory. Raiden levels here would be amazing. There are some level 2 steel balls and level 2 arc knights to shoot at, which do give triple the experience of a level 1. And looks like Raiden here, looked like they had a level, but never mind, not quite. The thing about Raiden is that it's not great against very tanky units, but, of course you can make up for that once you get levels, and especially level 2 or even level 3 Raiden starts to get to the point where it has very, very few counters, and it'll be able to kill, even tanky giants that it normally can't deal with. Rhino is back. Wasp Swarm shows up here as well. Vulcan's Descent on top of things. There are just so many small spells to deal with, and I'm very afraid of what on earth is going to happen on this flank. There is, of course, the Phoenix. A Crawler could get added. A Rhino, a Wasp. There's a Missile Strike that I have to deal with as well. And at the same time, I also have to make sure I can still win the main part of the field. So I buy another Raiden. I go for range enhancement on that. I level up my Tarantula. And I'm trying to look for the best way to defend this right side, which for the time being is just going to be a missile. And then a Wasp and a Rhino kind of in the middle here hedging, because my opponent also could, go for a Wasp and a Rhino on this side. It is very tricky to defend all of this. I think the missile, what I could have done is delay it. And what I mean by that is put it kind of all the way here, where it still has or sees the Phoenix, but then has some travel time to get to it. And then perhaps it would have hit the Wasps, although they do spawn in a little late, so I'm not entirely sure whether that actually is a thing or not, but it could have been an interesting idea. Thankfully, the Fang here doesn't get missiled, but I will lose my tower. But maybe I can win the main part of the fight quick enough to where that doesn't matter as much. Opponent goes for double blue Farseer, but hasn't gone for the aerial specialization tech just yet. Didn't have the money for that. And it looks like my Raidens will be able to survive at the very least. Even if I lose here, there just isn't enough material on the board to kill me. So I think I might have been fine regardless, as my opponent isn't using any small, or any big units rather, no giants. My Raidens do manage to win, if only on a sliver of hit points, and all of them now have a level available. Round number 7, we get unit reinforcements. Sledgehammer here, very, very nice for me. Great against the Shockwave Arclights, pretty good against the Farseers as well. And just in general, a very nice tank for both my Spiders and my Raiden. The same thing could be said for my opponent, though. I don't know if they run Link, but this is one of those scenarios where you could try and go for the Link regen gut shot. Especially against Raiden, it is not good at all into linked sledges. Just does not have the damage typically to get through them. So that could have been an idea. Opponent instead goes for the Fire Badgers, really trying to hammer on this right side flank, adding a Crawler and a Badger. Underground threat available once again as well. Oil gets picked up here for my opponent as we now have a scroll wheel worth of spells. AA on the Farseers obviously makes a lot of sense. I'm going to go for field maintenance on my Sledgehammers to kind of mitigate the shockwave damage and just in general add more tankiness, more stalling power to the board, buy more time for my Raidens. Subterranean Blitz gets picked up. I really would like double defense enhancement here, but I don't quite have the money. I am loaning. I was loaning last round too because I just didn't feel comfortable with my position at all, and that kind of justifies loaning a bit earlier. I am going to beacon across to the left because I saw my opponent was starting to level that tower. I was expecting some type of investment or just, you know, more tower levels on that side, and it happens to coincide with an oil play, which really favors me now because my tower isn't that well defended either at this point, but the oil kind of will slow that push down as well. Right side here does get missiled. The Crawler and the Badger a little bit too close to one another, so both of them get splashed, which means that I will be able to defend the flank. My Fang survives. Top left, Sledgehammer there, managing to distract the Farseer for quite a bit of time. And now you can start seeing the Raidens get to work. As they have their level 2, they have a lot more damage available. And so even the tankier units like that level 2 Farseer don't really pose a threat anymore. And now I'm starting to feel relatively confident about my position. It was looking dire, you know, that early game and even the start of the mid game. But now I'm getting towards the late stages where Raiden starts to scale and become a very, very scary carry. Both of us down to 1500. Laser sight shows up. We don't have spells for once. Or, well, one missile strike, I guess. But in comparison to some of the previous rounds, a little bit more tame. Wasp here gets picked up, or at least was already on the board last round. I did notice that that was there, but didn't really want to invest into it too much, or at least into its counter, because I was getting through it fine with just 2 Raidens. And Raiden can get through Wasp kind of okay-ish. It's not necessarily a counter, but out of all of the anti-air units, it definitely doesn't struggle as much into it as opposed to something like, well, a marksman or a melting point. Wasps on the flanks now, as I do want them to kind of get in late and maybe be able to deal with the opponent Wasps if they decide to buy more, which they do. EMP here, I think, mainly to try and deal with the Sledgehammer regen. I don't think it'll do too much on this side, but EMP is good against my board if it connects, you know. Tarantula's very, very tech heavy, and Raiden's, I mean, to a certain extent as well. Double attack, double defense enhancement for my opponent. I get double defense enhancement, which I wanted before. We'll just help out with my entire army and, you know, the field maintenance with regen, the Subterranean Blitz crawlers, all of that. I am going to again go for this beacon because I don't really want to move through that oil. And it seems like now finally the flanks have been stabilized. And Raiden's here, 1 level 3, which I consider to kind of start being the Exodia level for Raiden. It's where it really starts to not care anymore what it's shooting at. And we can see here that it's doing just fine against the Wasps. Just outranges them by a very large margin. And I should be able to win. Although I say that, this Farseer is putting in a lot of work. I do get the debuff. I managed to take down the level 2 Farseer, and there's no way that level 1 Farseer will be able to take down this level 3 Raiden. I potentially get another level 3 Raiden, but it won't quite be enough to finish off my opponent. So round 8 successful, but we will need to take this to round 9 at the very least, which is where we get unit drops and Ion Blast comes back of cooldown. Big round here, lots of decisions to make. Really, really high level Scorpion gets offered, which I decide to go for. I do run tank techs pretty much just for this specific unit drop. High level Scorpion is relatively common. And yeah, the tank techs on this unit got buffed repeatedly to the point where they're so cheap now that it's very easy to go for, you know, a kind of a low investment gut shot play. So I'm going to go for both regen and armor enhancement at this stage of the game. That's not too expensive to click, and this requires a very specific response from my opponent. There are some EMP Wasps, yes, but right now I don't think they're in a position where they should be able to do too much. Ion Beam, we're going to line it up kind of the same way as before. The only downside, I guess, is this Sledgehammer is pulling some units away from the Ion Beam, but I still think this is the best position to put it. If I can get rid of the arc lights already, that's really nice. And if I can take down a Farseer or heavily cripple it, that's a big bonus. I'm going to sell one of my Raidens here, and I'm going to beacon away the rest you know, managing to catch 2 tarantulas and the high-level Raiden here, just beaconing it back to defend the tower, but avoid the ion beam, which I was expecting on the left. Looks like I guessed correctly there. I'm going to go for energy shield on the Wasp. The main reason I do that is because I kind of wanted to be able to deal with the missile strike here, and I can't use the beacon to move this away. I wasn't entirely sure if my opponent was going to go for a heavier investment on the flank, so that's why I go for shield. It doesn't help against Farseer at all because it always shoots 2 missiles, but it should help against the enemy Wasps at least a little bit. And let's see how the right side does here. I mean, we can see the Scorpion got locked onto by at least this arc light, and it really is not going to die or even take damage at this point. Any damage it takes immediately gets healed back up. Right side tower will go down. And now the question is, can I get rid of the chaff? Because that really is the main problem that I'm going to have to deal with here. And it kind of looks like the answer to that is no, I can't. There's still a Wasp pack left alive, half a Crawler pack. And as strong as my Raiden is, it's not that good at clearing chaff without the chain tech. So I'm gonna run out of anti-air by the looks of things. Scorpion still doing a really good job. Maybe the Fangs actually will be able to win. Kind of looks like that is the case. I mean, look at this level 3 Phoenix. That is a very, very good DPS unit, but it is just unable to do anything against this Scorpion. Now, the EMP Wasps arrive, but they're level 1, so their DPS is rather insignificant. I will win the round, but I won't quite win the game. And now we take it to round number 10 with some very good item options here. We've got enhancement module available, which could be alright, but not too interested in that right now, because this will likely be the last round, so getting, you know, value over time from this is likely not going to be a thing. Laser sight is very easy to pick, so is heavy armor. Steel ball production could be an idea as well. I mean, it's one of the most powerful giant items in the game, if not at least the best spawn item. And I could use that on the right side of the board, potentially. It is kind of expensive though, but I think any of the left items here are completely fine to pick. I also have a decision to make with this Scorpion. I do decide to go for the more expensive item, which potentially might have the bigger or higher amount of value. I sell my Scorpion because I put it on the line, and I was expecting my opponent to go into Melting Point now, because, well, that's kind of the only way to kill that. They don't. At least right now, it doesn't seem to be the case. And I sell my Scorpion, which was worth a fair amount of credits, and triple tech my Raiden. From having only range to now having chain and EMP, which work very nicely together. Any of the units that get chained also get applied EMP. And the thing is, this also works very well against Wasp. I did think about a Wasp commit for my opponents as well, because again, my anti-Wasp here is not great. I don't have a fantastic way of dealing with it, but Raidens with chain are not horrible into it, especially when the Wasps are low level, so I kind of hedge both ways. EMP is strong against Melting Point, and the chain is good, well, at applying EMP, but it also helps a fair bit against Wasp, and you can see there, just such a large amount of Wasps get taken out once the Raidens, you know, shoot, and, well, they've got 3 beams, which each create 1 chain, so 6 targets get hit. And, well, when the Wasp has a pack of 12, it really doesn't take too long to get through the entire load of them. Raiden's here doing a great job EMPing the Farseers, and that unit is completely useless when it doesn't have any techs, at least this late into the game. And it looks like we will be able to get a win. Getting through a very rocky early game with a lot of small spells, tough to defend against everything, and very nearly costing us the game. But we managed to stabilize, we make some correct predictions, and finally the Raiden scale kind of out of control. Now, my opponent here could have won this game. There are quite a few things that could have been done. I want to go back to round 7 because I think we had the unit drop here. Yeah, we have the Sledgehammer one, which I know I did show in my last video, but I think this is maybe a good chance to kind of try it out and see that there are quite a few scenarios where this is a very viable play. So let's say that we do something like this. We sell the steel ball because it's a similar type of unit and it doesn't really achieve anything here. We are going to loan because my opponent is down to 1500 hit points. It's round 7. I saw that they loaned last round. So let's go for double defense enhancement. Let's buy those sledgehammers and go for something like this. I think that looks kind of good to me. And then the crawler, I mean, I can kind of put wherever. We still have some money left. Let's level up that left side tower because I'm not entirely sure if my opponent wants to attack here. Let's go for a missile here on that crawler. And that still leaves 100 resources pretty much anywhere we want. I could go for an aggressive crawler placement here in the back as well. That all would work. I guess I could just level up this and then see how things go. Oh, actually, I'm going to go for temp range here as opposed to the Phoenix level. I already have the Farseer AA, but this should be able to kind of, you know, put Sledgehammer Link regen to the test because it is tanking spiders with high explosive. It is tanking 3 Raidens, 2 of which are level 2. And we can see that it is taking absolutely no damage whatsoever. As long as you can keep this Link connected, you know, these 20 sledges are just going to spread out the damage each one of them takes, you know, across the 20. And with the regen, it is completely out of control. And yeah, 2300 damage there on round number 7 would have been more than enough to kill me. Very, very powerful gut shot move. I don't think I would have been able to realistically defend against this. It requires a very specific counter. Maybe if I went EMP preemptively, but even then, a lot of the sledgehammers still tend to tank for a long, long time. And yeah, I mean, I would have had to somehow build a melting point probably, but it makes no sense for me to do that here. So yeah, I think this would have just been the game, no matter if, you know, I had this play in mind or not as the Raiden player. Either way, if you liked this video, please leave a thumbs up and down in the comments below what you thought about it and whether or not you've been using this this sledgehammer gut shot, or, you know, if you've been having trouble against missile spec. I know I have. Has led to some very, very one-sided games where the early game just goes completely out of control. Either way, if you want to step to the latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.